Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Spirit Chat Radio. Today, I have an interesting subject that, to tell you the truth, I was kind of surprised at. I did a post on the Higher Purpose Learning group, and again, for those of you who don't know what that is, that's the private Facebook group that I have. You can find that by going to my website, keystothespiritworld.com, or I usually post links on my Facebook page or my email list that you can go ahead and click on. But I made a post and wanted to create this show because I started noticing that people were expressing a lot of fear when they're and causing them blocks when they want to learn about psychic development. And so this show is going to be about overcoming fear overcoming fear of psychic development. So what happens is people they want to develop, there's some hesitation there, they put up some blocks, and I started just asking people in this group, what is it that you're afraid of? Because if you're afraid, that hinders the development, puts up some blocks, and makes it a little bit more or a lot more difficult for you to move forward, tune into your spiritual body, and develop properly. And I know it is much easier to develop than some people are finding it is, but the reason for that is because of fear and blocks that they're putting up. So I'm going to talk about some of these because I actually found these quite fascinating, truthfully. The number one response that I seen over and over again was the fear of losing yourself. And I just really found that just sort of fascinating because I wanted to know how are you losing yourself? What do you mean? And a lot of people responded that they were afraid of changing, of them becoming somebody else. And potentially, which we'll be getting to the second one, friends and family seeing them differently, etc. But the fear of losing yourself should not even come into your mind as a fear whatsoever, because you don't lose any part of yourself. And I think that with that concept, that perspective, comes the fear of losing something that you like about yourself, because otherwise you wouldn't be afraid that part of yourself was gone, right? So it's the fear of losing something that you are familiar with or that you enjoy and you're comfortable with about yourself. That doesn't happen with psychic development. With psychic development, if anything, you get in touch with a deeper side of yourself. You get in touch with a spiritual aspect, your spiritual body. You start learning all the layers of who you are past the physical, and there's so much more cool stuff there that you haven't even scratched the surface of. And it's hard to do until you get into developing your psychic senses and get into your spiritual journey. There is layers to yourself that are so amazing that you've never even touched upon. Now, that being said, there is internal changing that takes place. And I think that might be what some people kind of fear. But this internal change is something that really feels good. You are not going to continue on this journey if it doesn't feel good, and truthfully, if that happens, you shouldn't. But that has never happened to a student I know. It hasn't happened to colleagues. You embrace what feels good and you move forward in that direction as far as spiritual development goes. Now, on the flip side, people also talk about, and tied in with this, is the fear of how friends and family will see them. Like, they lose part of themselves and they become this different person to everybody on the outside. Well, here's a little bit of insight on that. First of all, it's an internal change. It's not an external change, okay? We've already kind of covered that. It's an internal feel-good change. It's funny to me. It's just really fascinating that people think as they become more in tune with who they are on a spiritual level, their spiritual body, that somehow that's going to be crappier. Like, it's just, they're going to not recognize this person. And that doesn't happen. It's like you tune into this part of yourself and you go, wow, this is like a friend I forgot I had, like a long lost connection. It feels good. It's nice to be reunited type of thing. So getting into the friends and family part, people say, well, what if my friends or family see me different? And what if they don't like what they see and I no longer have things in common with them? That is a very valid concern, but there's an easy way around that. When you begin to develop psychically or become more in touch with yourself on a spiritual level, this is a personal journey. This is not something that you're supposed to be shouting out to the world and sharing with all your friends and family, unless it's something that maybe they're enjoying with you or that they want to come along this journey and be supportive. It's something that you maybe bond over. But developing your psychic senses is a personal journey. And so I think a lot of people are under the impression, I guess I don't know what that they think that they're going to be doing on a daily basis that's going to make everybody around them go, ooh, what's she doing? And or what's he doing? And why is that happening? And look at all those cards that they have around or look at those runes, or like, it's not like you become witchy and your environment changes or they would even know what you are doing. The only way that people will even know what you're doing is because maybe if you have a book or you're listening to shows or whatever, and they can hear them or they can hear audio files, etc. But you know what? People do that all the time when they're developing and learning, whether it's rebuilding a car engine or, redesigning their house. They're looking on Pinterest, they're buying books or magazines. It doesn't matter. And most of the time people don't really care. So unless you're sharing this, because like I said, this is a very personal journey, and I suggest not sharing it with people unless it's people who you are really close to and who you can have great conversations with about it, because you should be taking the steps slowly with yourself and seeing what develops and unfold. This is not something that you need to be sharing with everybody. In fact, I do this for a living. I teach classes, I do readings, I write books, and you'd be surprised at some of my family members that have no idea what I do. Like, you would be surprised. And even if they did, they'd probably kind of laugh it off and be like, that's weird, whatever. And they would probably even say some of the same things that maybe you guys have heard or are afraid of hearing, which is, what makes her think that she can do that. In fact, that's just some of my family members. Obviously, it'd be ones that I am not like super close with that I talk to, on a daily or weekly basis or anything. However, when I did become turn professional, which was in my early 20s, it was like a bazillion years ago, that did happen. There was people that were, and they will, if you share your journey with people and you share this development, and it sort of, if it consumes you, which you should never let something like this consume you, because, and although I've seen that happen, I've seen it happen with colleagues or students where they just get so obsessed and consumed with being so spiritual that they lose themselves on a physical aspect and they don't have balance. That's not healthy either. You want to have balance. But I had judgment. I had people looking at me going, who does she think she is? And I don't believe in that kind of stuff and whatever. It never ever, maybe I'm just weird, because it never bothered me. I was not in it to change anybody's mind about their own belief. That's not why I developed the way I was, but I had always been this way, so I didn't know how to become different. But what I'm talking about is when I actually kind of came out of the closet as a professional. That's when the judgment and whatnot came in. And, I wasn't doing it for those people. I was okay with them not believing if I did it or not believing in it, because was no part of my goal whatsoever. It was not a part of my path. It just didn't matter to me. I mean, the people who who wanted information or that I could help, those were the people I wanted coming to me and talking to me about it. But other than that, truthfully, I don't want to spend family picnics talking about my psychic classes, or I never talk about readings. That's a personal thing. But like, I don't really want to have, talk about astro travel when I'm at family dinner all the time like that. I want another part of my life. And so you can have both. You can have your personal journey. You can have a wonderful relationship with friends and family that do not have anything to do with psychic development, and you should keep that. It's a personal thing. So you don't need to share it. You're not going to lose yourself. You're going to enhance yourself. You're going to discover this part of yourself that is absolutely amazing and wonderful. And it's a personal journey. It's not a shared journey unless you choose it to be. So, and if you choose it to be, then you're going to probably most likely be sort of ready, and you should be. If and when it does get to the part where you do want to share, you will get judgment. It's going to happen, and you will have people in disbelief, and that doesn't make your abilities less or whatever. It's just like, it's an opinion. It really doesn't mean anything, or shouldn't mean anything. It really doesn't to me. And another fear that came up, we're going to go on to the next one, is being wrong. And that's an interesting, valid fear, because you will be wrong when you're developing at some point in time as you're learning what it feels like to be when you're right. Then you also learn how it feels when you're off. So we call it in the industry, you're off, not wrong. Because you're wrong the way that you guys might have the perceive that it would be. Because what happens is things get lost in translation. You're picking up on a valid vibe, but if don't have the proper training to allow this energetic vibe to come through and translate into pictures and things that you can understand and bring into the physical realm. If you don't have the proper training, then you're going to be off. And are you going to be off? Most likely, yes, at some point in time, you're going to be off. Everybody has been. Every colleague I've ever known, they've had times that they were off. Will it matter? It's really good to understand what feels like when you're off. It can happen. It's just like any type of thing that you are going to learn to do. If let's say you were taking up crocheting or photography, there's going to be some stuff that you do that isn't awesome. And the more that you practice, the more knowledge that you retain, and the more that you develop, this is going to be less and less and less, and you're going to just create this huge knowledge base that's going to allow you to become better and better and better at what you do. So you might as well toss that fear of being wrong out the window, because yes, it most likely will happen at some point in time, and that's 100% okay. That's how you learn. Another fear that people had was being let down. So for instance, if they were afraid that they maybe thought that they had this ability that they found out that they didn't have the more that they developed, or that they won't develop as far as that they think that they should, or they're feeling left behind, that they're feeling stuck in their development. So this is a really interesting fear as well, and I think it's a good one to address. As far as being let down, if you are led in the direction of being interested, first of all, everybody has some type of ability. The ability to utilize it is what everybody does not have, because they do not have the knowledge to utilize it or care to put proper things in place to utilize it. They have the ability, it's just they don't utilize it and or do not have the knowledge. And so if you're interested in all in this types of subject, that interest is actually backed by some type of ability that's kind of pushing to the surface and wanting you to explore. It's trying to nudge you and go, hey, you have this, let's utilize it and do something with it. So that's there. Now, as far as not having the ability that you think you may have, that is a little bit different than you think as well, because I think, first of all, I do not believe that a lot of people who are on their spiritual journey or learning to develop have all the proper knowledge anyways of what types of abilities are out there. That's first off. First off, people don't even know what types of abilities are there, so they don't even have the proper knowledge to make that decision on, I have this ability and I do not have this ability. You hear about clairvoyance, clairaudience, that type of thing, but you don't actually hear about, there's so many more abilities that you don't hear about. And also people have combinations of abilities. Nobody usually has one ability. They usually have several, and they all work in different combinations. You can have 5 different people with the same themes they think is abilities, and they're all going to have a different combination. So the abilities are there. You probably most likely have different ones than you thought that you did anyways. So that is probably very accurate. That doesn't mean that they're going to be less than you thought. It just means they're probably going to be different. And that's okay, but that also comes with development and training, because people, the next thing that they worry about, okay, I can deal with that. I'm going to learn what abilities I have, but what if I go for 3 years and I don't develop? And I just feel like I'm stuck in the same place. I'm not moving anywhere. I feel repetitive in what I know. No advancement. I had that question as well. Well, that absolutely can happen if you do not have proper training. It really, really can. And this is something that I find interesting. And I'm going to do a post on this when I'm talking about how to start your spiritual journey. This would be like there's so many little intricate things about learning to develop yourself on a psychic level or to tune into your psychic senses. I'm bringing this car engine up thing again, but if you had a car engine and somebody told you to fix it because it was broken, or somebody told you to take it apart and put it back together, and you had no knowledge and you had no manuals and you had no tools to do this, how in the world is that ever going to happen? People think that there is not much to developing your psychic ability or psychic senses, and that it could not be far from the truth. There's not 5 steps that you take. There's not like you read a book and all of a sudden you develop, or even read 10 books and suddenly you develop. This is a journey, and it's a learning journey, and there are a lot of intricate parts that work and have to move together, and you have to have a lot of knowledge. You have to learn entirely how your spiritual body works, how you receive this information, what the translation process is, etc., etc. This is a huge knowledge base if you really do want to develop, that you can absolutely start by reading, listening to podcasts such as this, etc., on your own. But at some point, it's very important, if you do want to develop or you're feeling stuck, that you need more training and more knowledge. And this is why I developed that psychic ability class as well, because it is really important for people to be able to have the access to the proper knowledge and the proper mentorship. You will get stuck at some point if you don't have it. So if you're feeling stuck or afraid you're going to be stuck, you absolutely will need to find a mentor, or will need to find classes. You will need to learn and get more knowledge to develop further. So continuing education is actually key here. It's really, really important. So that brings us to the next one, is the fear of the unknown, which is a really popular fear. Very, very popular. And I don't think that, when I'm teaching, I don't think that people are necessarily more as afraid of the unknown in the way that they think they are. I think that they're more afraid of when they start to develop psychically, when they really tune into their spiritual body. I think that they're more afraid of all the energies that they're feeling. So their spiritual, when you begin to develop psychically and you get the proper training and you learn to move forward and advance, you will become very familiar with all these feelings that you're experiencing in your body, and you feel like they're physical sensations, but as you begin to develop, you'll learn that they're actually your body, your spiritual body being able to read energy. And that's that feeling that, like, if you're in a scary movie and it puts you on the edge of your seat and you're just waiting for like somebody to jump out of the closet or whatever, and it's kind of on edge and you can feel that. You can feel energies in the same way. So I think that with people's mind, it gives them like that correlation, like they have that nervousness when they can feel energies in the body, and they just start waiting. Their mind correlates it to a lot of shows or different things, like it's some spooky, crazy thing that's going to be happening because their eyeballs are not being able to place it on anything physical that's making them feel that way. So the fear of the unknown, there's not a lot of the unknown that, in my opinion, and I've done this my entire life, that you should be afraid of. You should be, in fact, it's funny because people are like, well, aren't you afraid of spirits, or are you afraid of this, or you, and I'm like, oh God, no. I am way more afraid of crazy people who actually live on this planet than I am afraid of anything going on in the spiritual realm. And believe me, I've developed to a very high level in the spiritual realm. I have seen some crazy stuff, and you should be way more afraid of the crazy person, down the road than you should be of any negative entity or spirit coming into your area. So the fear of the unknown, there's also lots of protection in the unknown. There's just not a lot that I really honestly do not think there's much that you can experience in the unknown that you should be afraid of. But what brings the fear is not knowing what all of these different things are. So astral travel is a very good example of that. It freaks people out all the time when they leave their body and then they maybe travel around, or they see gray spaces, or they're coming back into their body and they see walls doing different things. And basically they're just... the more knowledge that you gain in this area, your fear will go down and down and down. That's where fear always comes from, is it comes from the lack of knowledge. That's what that is. When you're knowledgeable about what you're experiencing, then the fear will dissipate and just go away nicely. And again, I hate to reiterate this, but the way that you become knowledgeable is by, by reading, developing, finding a mentorship program, taking classes. You educate yourself on anything that you're fearful of. You educate. So you will be able to control it too, which is also the fear of the unknown. People say, well, what if I can't control it? If something that scares them, it's the unknown and then not being able to control it because they don't know what it is. Again, that comes with knowledge. You're always in control when you're developing your psychic senses. And that's an interesting one too, because I think that most people do not feel like they're in control of their regular life, or they feel like they have no control over just regular circumstances. So I don't know why that they would want the need to control other things as well. In fact, with psychic development and furthering yourself universal laws, you want to learn to let go of the control factor, because that's doesn't work the way that you think it does. It doesn't work very well when you're trying to bring in and manifest and law of attraction and all of that. So voices, hearing voices, that one made me laugh. And it probably shouldn't, but it did. People say, well, I'm afraid of hearing voices and thinking I'm going crazy. And that is interesting, because there's also another social aspect of that, or, where people, that's what they think is, oh my God, if you're hearing voices, you need to go to the psychopath place, or psychopath, the psych ward. You need to go to see a doctor. You might have schizophrenia, whatever. Now, the reason that I find this funny is a couple of different reasons. One is people hear voices of spirits talking to them all the time, or conveying blocks of information through what they consider, a thought process in the head. And they just think it's their own voice talking to them. That's what I find very interesting, is most everybody who's probably even listening to this podcast has heard spirits talking to them. They come in forms of blocks of thought, and they come in blocks of information, and a lot of people translate that as their own thought. And I find that really kind of just funny and fascinating. And the other thing is, you won't necessarily hear voices the way that you think that you would unless you're clairaudient. Some people will only hear them just like you in your mind. So you may hear them just like you remember a conversation that you had with somebody the other day. So if you were gonna go crazy or hear voices or have any mental issue, most likely it would have already happened by now and you would have been checked out, etc. But be developing on a spiritual path and learning and psychic development is not going to throw you over the edge into where you're, hearing voices that you should not be hearing. Will you hear some? Yes, you're probably most likely have already heard them. You just think they're your own voice. It's determining the difference. And that kind of gets into my more advanced class. But then another thing is helping people. They have a fear of like, am I going to be able to help people? Am I going to be able to do this? Whatever, etc. As far as they want to help everybody else spiritually develop. Now, I'm feeling very passionate about this one because I feel like people need to really concentrate on their own development before that they decide that they want to go help the masses. Now, I think that that's a genuine, wonderful, heartfelt thing to do, is want to go help the masses, but you really need to understand, develop, and get your own abilities under control before you really and really become familiar with your abilities before you can learn to spread the love and spread the knowledge around. It's really important. It is a you journey. I cannot repeat that enough because I had this happen so much, or had this question so much. This is not a friends and family journey. This is not a masses journey. This is not a I need to heal the world journey. This is not a people journey. This is a you journey. This is for you. When you develop your psychic senses, this is supposed to enhance your life. This is where you begin to become in touch with your own internal guidance system. This is not meant to help other people. And even if I didn't do what I did professionally and I was still very psychically developed and I didn't do it for a living, the other thing that I find interesting is people think, I have heard them say, I've heard them talk about it, that once they psychically develop that they're just going to be using this ability every once in a while, once a week, or like you concentrate on this ability and then you're going to go ahead and utilize it that day, that week, that month, or for big decisions. That's not even what psychic development is for, and becoming in tune with your psychic senses. That's not what it's for at all. It is to use on a daily basis. You will be using, once you learn to really become in tune and psychically develop, you'll be using this all the time. Or you should be using this all the time. I started thinking about it because somebody had asked me about it, and we actually got into the discussion about when, they're going to use their psychic senses or development or whatever. And I realized, I feel my way through life. I feel everything that I do. Everything is made, my decisions, from what I'm going to eat that day to what I'm going to do as far as exercising, when I'm going to leave for whatever. I feel my way through life. Everything is really centered and based around my psychic senses. And I did not even notice that about my own self until somebody asked me how much that I utilize it. And I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, I very rarely make decisions that I do not feel and then think about it, at the exact same time. So everything is based on how I feel on an intuitive scale. Everything. And then, of course, you take your mind, your knowledge with your mind into account with all those decisions that you're doing as well. But I do nothing with strictly, my mind says I should do this, but my feeling is that I should do something else. Never, ever, because if I do that, it just never ends good. And I've made that mistake once or twice. If talk about being wrong, is following my head instead of my intuition. I usually couple the two together and I use that. But anything I do throughout the day is followed by a noticeable feeling in the body. Anything, everything that I do. So I'm very guided by my psychic senses. So that's really important for people to understand, is that they are going to be utilizing this ability, or they should be. That's the way it's meant to be used. It's a daily, hourly, minutely thing to use. It's not a weekly, monthly type thing or an event type thing. That's not why you should do this. The last thing that I found that was very interesting that somebody had said was that some of their friends or who were psychics or whatever said that they would be tested by dark ones if they developed psychically, and they were worried about where that would lead them, or what the heck dark ones would be. Now, if you ask me, that is horrible advice to give someone who is wanting to learn to develop on a psychic level. It's just the talk about the fear of the unknown, and then you're like, oh my gosh, and then you're gonna be tested by dark ones. And not only that, not only just that's not a very good perspective or knowledge to give somebody, because it doesn't work like the way that a regular person's thinking in their head, but you're always tested by dark ones or negative energies or dark entities. You don't even have to be in tune with your psychic senses, or you don't have to know that you're in tune with your psychic senses whatsoever to be tested. People are tested on a daily basis by negative energies or dark ones kind of coming in and trying to alter their thought patterns and trying to get them to think a certain way or do something a certain way that will bring their vibration down. And that is what any dark entity wants to do anyways, is they want to learn, or they want to bring your vibration down. And you absolutely, that's their goal. So that's why you would ever be tested from some type of negative entity anyways, or whatever. That's the goal, is to bring your vibration down. And they absolutely do not need to wait until you psychically develop to do that. They can do it at any point in time. They can talk through you, and you can hear what you think might be your own thought process when they're saying you're not good enough and you can't do this and you should do that. And any fears that you have, like when you start becoming really afraid, and then you hear that little voice in your head saying, yeah, and you should be afraid of this and should be afraid of that, that is usually a darker entity anyways, or a more negative spirit trying, because they see opportunity, they see a crack to be able to give you some information that will bring your vibration down. And since, like I said, although this is more of an advanced class, you guys are hearing things a lot of times that are not always from your mind or your thought process, then they see a crack and they slip in there and they start feeding your fears. So psychically developing does not have really anything to do with being tested from negative type energies, ever. There's plenty of negative energies that are here in the physical realm, that have manifested in the physical realm. And there is a lot of negative energies that still manifest regardless of your psychic development. So you're always going to be tested. It's always going to be dark versus light. The light is always trying to raise your vibration. The dark is always trying to bring you down. But as far as being tested, you most likely have been, will be in the future regardless. It doesn't matter. So that's kind of a moot point. So, hopefully this was helpful in addressing some of your major fears about, and will help you overcome your fears about psychic development, because, like I said, it's almost sad to me that people are so afraid of some things that can be so life enhancing and can make life so much easier. And you can discover things about yourself that you're like, wow, like I would have missed this. I would have missed knowing this about myself, or I would have missed feeling this good by becoming in tune. Or the more that you develop and the more that you find knowledge about the universal laws and how those work, life can become easier as long as you have an open mind. But I'm going to reiterate that in order to do this properly, you want to read and you want to learn and you want to gain as much knowledge as you can. You want to sponge it up, but you also are going to, at some point in time, after you've developed far enough, it's important for you guys to find a mentor at some point in time, or take classes or continuing education. If you're feeling stuck, then that is the time where you need more knowledge, you need more steps, you need to be able to understand it better. And this is, it seems like a simple process, but there is a lot of things that you have to, a lot of intricate parts that you have to relearn about yourself. It's pretty massive, everything. So why I suggest reading and listening to podcasts, because you learn the basics and you start learning more and more and more, and then you add more to that layer and you add more to that, and then you find your mentor, you take your classes, and if you're stuck, you just need more information. You just need more knowledge to develop, and that is hopefully very helpful for you guys. Don't forget to check out my website, keystothespiritworld.com. On there, you will find the links to the Higher Purpose Learning Group. You will also find links to Facebook, etc., and my classes. So if you are interested in learning more about psychic ability classes from me, which is why I developed them, then you can go ahead and check out the classes portion on my Keys to the Spirit World website. And until next time, hopefully this was helpful. You have a wonderful day. Aloha.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere, for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Black Friday is coming, and for the adults in your life who love the coolest toys, well, there's something for them this year too. Bartesian is the premier craft cocktail maker that automatically makes more than 60 seasonal and classic cocktails, each in under 30 seconds at the push of a button. And right now, Bartesian is having a huge site-wide sale. You can get $100 off any cocktail maker or cocktail maker bundle when you spend $400 or more. So, if the cocktail lover in your life has been good this year, or the right kind of bad, get them Bartesian. At the push of a button, make bar-quality cosmopolitans, martinis, Manhattans, and more. All in just 30 seconds. All for $100 off. Amazing toys aren't just for kids. Get $100 off a cocktail maker when you spend $400 through Cyber Monday. Visit Bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.